Hello and welcome. This is going to be a quick video run through of the installation of Ubuntu 18.04 Server Edition on VMware Fusion. And I'm going to follow up with a quick installation of the LAMP software on prior versions of the Ubuntu Server environment. The LAMP installation was an option within the server setup. That's no longer the case, but it just takes a few quick steps to get that going. And then we also need now to configure MySQL security installation. And I'm also going to show you how to get that going. So let's go ahead and get started. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you how to get the installation started on Fusion. And then I'm going to switch over to another recording I've already made with the installation on a Windows machine. Once you get the installation started, the installation is actually identical on either Windows or the Mac version. And so I'll just save myself some recording time that way. The first thing you're going to need is the Ubuntu ISO. That's a CD image file. We don't actually need to work with a CD. We can work with the image file. So go on over to ubuntu.com. The things move around a little bit, but you can probably find it. Currently, if you go to download here, you can see either the desktop or the server version. I recommend the long-term support version. They come out with a long-term supported version every couple of years. We're up to 18.04 now. If you want to experiment with the latest and greatest, you can go ahead and get that, but I always recommend the long-term support edition. It's stable, you know what it is and exactly what to expect. Go ahead and download that, tuck it away in a place you can find it. The desktop, of course, or somewhere in a folder that you can later go ahead and find it. The second thing you need is VMware Fusion. So go over to VMware.com. This is not a free product. Pricing is not too bad on the Mac for the Fusion product. And always check if you're eligible for an academic discount. But at least to get started, check the downloads, go to free trials, free product trials and demos. For the Mac, you're going to want Fusion. Of course, Workstation Pro is the version for Windows. You'll trade a little bit of personal information. You can get a limited trial. I think it's 30 days or something or other like that. And then if you want, you can go ahead and purchase that product. There's another alternative that is free, that's VirtualBox. I'm not currently covering that at the University of Arizona. We're using the VMware products for our courses. They're robust and fairly easy to work with, but you can take a look and give VirtualBox a try. That's another virtualization product that will also work. So once you've got those ready to go, go ahead and install Fusion, and then I'll take it from there to get you started on this installation. So let's quit Chrome, and let me also get rid of my Finder window and take a look at the installed Fusion product. So the way we get that started is to go File and New. Pull this up here, the installation method, and we're going to install from disk or image. All we need to do is drag the ISO and drop it on this area here. And we're going to pick this ISO that we've downloaded and then click Continue. There's an option to use an easy install method. I do recommend that method if you're going to install the desktop edition. But for server, I'm going to uncheck easy install, and we're going to select some of our options here. We'll go ahead and click Continue, and we're going to specify the boot firmware. Legacy BIOS is what we're going to use here. We'll go ahead and click Continue. Now, here's where we're going to need to make some selections. We're going to check the device summary. We're going to networking. We're going to leave that at NAT. We're going to use the default option of 2 gigabytes here. and that's probably going to be fine. The new hard disk capacity 20 gigabytes, that's the default. If you know you're going to be using more, that's the largest the virtual disk can get. If, for example, you're going to be storing a large number of video files for some project, then you might want to boost that up a little bit. But that's probably going to be sufficient for most purposes. And then the ISO that we've downloaded is what we're going to be using as the installation media. If we need to change any of those, we can click Customize Settings, but for right now, that's probably fine. A word about this networking. I would recommend starting out with this. You can later change that to bridge mode, and that would allow you to set up a virtual machine that other devices on your network, other computers could get to. There will be a link to a document in the comment section below that you can download, and it will have some additional instructions on some setup options that will show you how to go to bridge mode and fixed IP, and that will act as a supplement. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish at this point, and that will allow you to save this with a name. I'm going to change this name and keep it simple and in keeping with some of my other videos. So I'm going to go Ubuntu 1804, which is our version number, and S for server. You also can store this in different files on your hard drive. I'm going to leave this at the virtual machines folder, which is the default setting. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And that brings us up to the point where we can start the installation. So I'll go ahead and click the Start button here, and it will begin to start the installation. This will take a few minutes. This opens up a terminal, and the remainder of our installation is in terminal. I'll let that go ahead and get started for a few seconds here. All right, this is where the installation starts. I'll point out one thing. This is in terminal mode, so there isn't a mouse. You need to click in this to actually start the installation. Click your position your mouse cursor in here and then click it. And then your mouse disappears. Control Command will recover your mouse if you need to get outside this terminal window, and then clicking in it will start the process again so that you can make these selections. And from then it's up and down arrow. Tab key will get you to various selection points as you move through the installation. And it's at this point that I'm going to stop this first portion of the recording and then splice in the recording that I've already made on a Windows machine, because from here on in the installation is identical on the Windows and the Mac. So turning you over to the rest of the installation recording. Thank you. And it will start the installation process, and it may give you some messages about different things. It may ask you about devices that are attached to your host system, various USB devices, whether or not they're going to be attached to the virtual machine or not. It'll start the installation, and we can look at the first initial boot up process as it gets the CD image going. And you may find that this process has changed quite a bit. If you're familiar with the 1604, the last long-term supported edition, there are a whole new set of prompts here. The first one, of course, is pick your language. Now you find, as with the previous editions, that your cursor here, you need to actually click in the installation window here in order to get to where you can arrow up and down to select your options here. And then to release the cursor, you need to press your Control and Alt key. This is indicated down here once you click in the window. And actually, it's better now about releasing the mouse. They've done some work here with the virtualization, but you may find to release the mouse you have to hit the Control and Alt key. But as I say, click in the window so that you can activate your cursor and selection keys inside the window. Highlight your language and then press enter when you're done. As far as the keyboard layout, again, you can tab here to go to the various selections if you think you need to change this. So again, your tab key is what navigates. When you've got your correct selections highlighted, tab to the done option and then press enter. It will auto-detect your card, your network card. Just check and make sure that's correct. ENS33 is the standard name that it usually gives an Ethernet card, and it will give your IP address that it detects, and then it will default to done. Usually you don't have to do anything here if there's a problem or if it doesn't detect something. You'll have to correct your networking before you can proceed. You do need to be connected. For the most part, when you're doing this, it'll attempt to do a system update and security update. When you complete the process, we'll take a look at that in a minute. So assuming that this is correct, you can go ahead and press done. One case that you might have to make some choices here, if you have multiple network interface cards, you may need to select the one that you want to bind to the virtual machine. But assuming you only have one, then you can go ahead and press done here. It's almost certain that you won't have a proxy address. If you know that you need one, then you can enter the proxy server that you need to reach to enter the outside world, but that's almost never the case with a home network. So make sure that done is highlighted and press enter here. If you need to enter an alternative mirror for Ubuntu, this may be the case if you are residing in a foreign country where there's a mirror that is better for you to access the Ubuntu repositories, but you can usually just leave this where it is and highlight that. You can use the entire disk. You can use the entire disk and set up LVM. For this virtual machine that we're setting up here, I recommend that you don't do that. Just default to use an entire disk and press enter. For the virtual machine that we're creating, you want to go ahead and default to this dev/SDA local disk. That's the virtual disk that you're creating on your computer. If you were doing a live install on a disk array or a RAID array or something or other like that, you would have other options here, but this is the one that you want, so just go ahead and hit the default. This is just presenting you with the options. This for our virtual machine is going to be fine, so go ahead and click done and press enter. Now at this point you actually have to positively make the selection of defaults to know if this were a live system. You'd want to think about this, but what you're going to want to do is press the tab key to get to continue and then press enter, and it goes ahead and initializes that virtual disk. At this point you can key in the primary user's name and the server name, and then a username and a password. So I'm going to make this simple, and I recommend you do the same. This is not going to be a secure environment. This is something for you to play around with. So I'm going to key in name user1, and I'm going to give the server name the same name I gave the directory. So we're going to call this Ubuntu 1804. S for server. I'm going to username, and it's going to be user1, and I just do password. If you pick something else, write it down. If you pick something and then forget it, it creates kind of a mess. So whatever you pick, make it simple. And then tab again down to done. For this, you almost certainly want to install OpenSSH Server, and to select it, you press the space bar to put an X here. If you just go through this too quickly and you press the tab key and you go to done, it's not going to get installed. You can install it later. This is not an unrecoverable mistake. OpenSSH Server will allow you to use file transfer protocols to get stuff from your host machine to the virtual machine. So there's really no reason not to select this. You want this installed almost certainly. If you don't check the box, but I'm just saying you almost certainly want this installed. When the X is there, and again to repeat, you press the space bar. You can toggle it off with the space bar too, but space bar toggles it on. Then you can press the tab key. You probably won't import an SSH identity if you have a GitHub account and you're configuring this virtual machine to transfer files back and forth with your GitHub or Launchpad account, then you'll already know about this and you'll have SSH keys that you want to import. But and then you can say yes, and then you can configure this, but probably you're not going to be doing this with this virtual machine. If you do, fine, go ahead, and then hit tab once more to get to done, and then you can press enter. There's the option here, which is new since 1604, to import a bunch of server environments, and if you know about these, then you can arrow up and down and press the space bar to select one or more of these. And so one option you might pick would be Postgres SQL. That's an alternative to MySQL. That would be a popular one. If you want to experiment with Amazon Web Services, you could do that. So if you know about one of these and want to install it, arrow up or down, press the space bar. Otherwise, if you don't want to install any of these, press the tab key and you're done. Now, it's going to start installing a bunch of things, and then it's going to run an update. And this gets a little bit confusing because it's not entirely clear from the prompts when this is done. So this is going to take a while. If you want to watch what's going on, you can hit the tab key and you can select view full log and then press enter to view the full log. And that will sort of show you what it's doing, although it's a little bit confusing because there isn't really a progress bar. And then if you want to close that again, you can press the tab key to select close, press enter, and you're back to this sort of spinning stick mode. So I'm going to pause the video here actually and let it spin. And this will take, depending on your system, it could take 15 minutes or so. I'll give you a report on that, and I'll come back when we get to the next point when you have to do something. Okay, now there's a point here where you'll note that it says the installation is complete. And you change your options down here from close and view full log to view full log and cancel, update, and reboot. And at this point, if you want to, you'll notice that it says it's downloading and installing security updates. If you want to, you can go ahead and cancel and reboot the system at this point. My recommendation is to go ahead and let it download and install the security updates. And again, it's a little bit difficult to tell when that's complete. You can, let me go ahead and recapture the system. You can go ahead and view the full log. And there are points in here where it's not clear that it's actually doing anything, except if you go back to close, you can see that there's still a spinning stick. And so it's not entirely clear when this is finished. But I would just go ahead and let this go on for a while. Eventually the stick will stop spinning, or maybe it won't. And you can go back to view full log, and that will give you some idea. It'll go beyond this point, and you'll get some idea of when it's probably over. So again, I'm going to pause the system here now and let it spin for a while, and we'll come back when it's time to do something. So at some point, if you've been watching the log, you'll see something to the effect that all upgrades are installed. So I'm going to close out the log now. Let me go ahead and put my cursor back in here. And we can view the full log. Now, it's going to ask you to reboot. So you're going to need to tab down to reboot, and then you're going to want to hit the reboot key. And it says remove the installation medium, then press enter. You don't actually have, for example, a CD to remove. So you can just go ahead and press enter at this point, and the system will reboot. And then we can log in to the new installed system. Now, what I found is that no matter how patient you are, it will sort of step all over your first login attempt, and it will start doing things even though it says you've logged in. So you can wait for it, or you can just start typing it. You can type over this, or you can press enter a couple of times and you'll get your login back. And you can log in with a username and password you set when you did the installation. So we'll go user1 and password, and that'll get us logged in. Now, at this point, we've got the system installed, but we don't have LAMP, and I'm going to run through just a few quick steps here to get LAMP installed. LAMP, again, is the web hosting environment that many people like to have installed on a basic system. And so the first thing to do is, although the system did a security update, it doesn't update everything that's here, and you'll notice that we are showing 57 packages can be updated. So we're first going to issue an update and upgrade command as follows. And that command is as follows. By the way, there's a link to some documentation that has these commands in it. I'll put that in the section below the video here, so you can go retrieve that document, and you'll have these and a bunch of other information as well too, other things you may want to do following the installation. And this will take a few seconds. I'll pause the documentation while it performs these steps. Okay, now once the update and upgrade process is finished, installing LAMP is really just a matter of two simple commands. The first is to install a program called Task Cell, and that's easily accomplished. Let me get my cursor here. Sudo apt install task cell, and then sudo task cell install LAMP server, and that will install LAMP. And this will take a few seconds. I'll go ahead and pause the video while we're getting this going. All right, now our LAMP server is installed. The packages are installed. There's one more step that we probably need to take. As installed, MySQL Server is not secure. That there's no root password installed, and MySQL is not really configured. So there is an installation script you can run at this point, and I'll walk you through that. So start with sudo MySQL underscore secure underscore installation. The first thing it's going to ask is that it asks you whether or not you want to install a plugin to test passwords and improve security. So it checks the strength of passwords and allows the user to set only those passwords which are secure enough. And would you like to install that? For this installation, if you want to come up with an easy password for MySQL and the users that you're going to set up in MySQL, I'm going to recommend no, because that can become kind of a pain. In a live installation, you might want to install this, but I'm going to answer N for no. And then now is where you are going to set the password for MySQL, and I'm going to pick something simple. I'm just going to put MySQL. And then you have to re-enter that. Now, I'm going to recommend you go ahead and answer yes for all of the other prompts, because this will make MySQL more secure. And so we're going to remove anonymous users, disallow root login remotely. We're going to answer yes for that. Remove test database and access to it. We're going to answer yes to that. Reload privileges table now. We're going to answer yes to that. And that's all there is to resetting security. There's one other thing you're probably going to want to do, especially if you want to install programs like phpMyAdmin. The new default authentication is by a plugin called AuthSocket, and that causes problems when you try to install programs like phpMyAdmin. So you want to actually change MySQL to allow local password authentication for the root user. And you can look that up if that sounds a little bit confusing. It's a little bit obscure, but just trust me, if you want to install some other software that will need to allow the root user to authenticate by password, then you're going to need to do this. So I'm going to show you the command here and then show you what it changed. So here's the command, and let me type it in, and then I'll show you what it does. First of all, we need to enter MySQL. So and so now we're in MySQL. So here's the command. Alter user root at localhost identified with MySQL native password by MySQL. And that's just saying we want to change the authentication method from authsocket to a native password for the user root. And then we're going to give it the same password that we just gave it in our previous command. So let me execute that, and then we can verify that. Let me first issue this command, which actually makes that take effect now, which is flush privileges. And then let me execute another command that will show you the command that I just gave was actually executed. Okay, this is just a query that's going to show the authentication string for the users that are currently in the MySQL user table. And we can see that for the user root, the plugin is now MySQL native password. If we'd run this command before we executed our previous command, it would have shown the authsocket plugin rather than the MySQL native password. So now we can quit, and we can assure that we can use the local password to access the MySQL monitor for the user root by executing by trying to enter MySQL with the minus Fusion. We can get into MySQL this way, which we couldn't have done before. And so enter the password. We're going to enter that password that I gave. The MySQL is the password that I gave. And since we can get into MySQL this way, we would not have been able to do that had I not gone through this process. And this makes MySQL behave the way it used to behave in 1604. So the things you used to be able to do in the previous LAMP setup that was the default with 1604, you can now do with 1804. So we can quit. And that pretty much ends the configuration and the purpose of this video, which was for you to be able to get 1804 set up on VMware Workstation or Fusion. It's the same. The configuration part's the same with either product. In basically the same way that you had it working with 1604, so that you can do the same kinds of things. So I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or problems. If you follow these instructions, it should be pretty foolproof. So go forth and have fun. Thank you.